Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Dr. Ahmed, the member of the Foreign Relations Committee at the Egyptian House of Representatives. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight, and we will be commenting on the last top story for today, as Egypt asserted the necessity of swiftly reaching a deal between the US and Iran to evade further escalation in the Middle East. The statement was made by the Foreign Ministry on Monday, as the statement also stressed the necessity for all the parties to respect the international law and the UN Charter. It said it is necessary to reach a settlement with regards to the Iranian nuclear file and to free navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. The statement underscored the necessity of respecting the sovereignty of the countries. It stressed the stance against using power in solving conflicts and rather focusing on diplomacy. Dr. Ahmed, how would you comment on the latest updates in the region, more specifically the strikes that took place between Israel and Iran for the past 24 hours and the negotiations going back and forth between the US and Iran in a means to be ending the war, and the role of Egypt in all of that in terms of mediation?
As we discussed briefly, I personally love what Egypt is doing in this portfolio, and how Egypt is ensuring or trying its best to ensure that peace prevails, just like how Egypt played a very important role in Gaza by hosting the Sharm el-Sheikh. Also, Egypt played a very important role in ensuring that all different stakeholders sit on the table and start negotiations in Pakistan. So Egypt again is playing its role in ensuring world security, and as you said, Egypt is using its own tools and techniques that prove to be working, and they will definitely prove to be working in the very near future.
Yes.
As for the bombing that's happening, I personally believe that all parties see that it's in everyone's best interest to reach a deal very soon, because this is connected to the midterm elections in the US, and we can see the drift between Bibi or Netanyahu and Trump over the past couple of weeks, and how Netanyahu doesn't really care about the political hit Trump is getting back home.
Yes.
And how Republicans in the primaries in many different states are actually losing certain battlegrounds that have always been Republicans for very long periods of time.
Yes.
So it's in America's best interest, it's in the Republican Party best interest, and we also the vote in the American Congress with 215 votes against 208 in favor of ending the war and stopping the war. So the international public opinion and the American public opinion is pushing in that direction. And regardless of how strong you are as a politician, eventually you have to listen to the voters, especially that we are approaching elections, and the midterm elections in this case. So I personally believe that it's in everyone's best interest for this to stop and for it to come to an end very soon. However, I believe such acts, they're just like negotiation tactics. Everyone is trying to score a better negotiating position, because I personally believe they're in the final touches of the agreement.
Yes, and we'll be heading to the report of the Daily Debate for tonight, focusing on the statements of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, stating that one of the main African priorities for the near future will be the sustainable finance, adding that there will be no peace without development and vice versa. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi signals the African priorities for the sustainable finance and stresses no development without peace. Egypt is actively pursuing deeper economic integration with the African nations through the joint infrastructure projects and increased private sector participation. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has prioritized the cooperation with the continent to build a shared economic future. The joint African action is the only viable path to resolving the conflicts and establishing a development model based on the exchange of expertise. Also, the Egyptian private sector's role is crucial in the continental infrastructure, as strengthening the interconnectedness through the infrastructure is important in boosting trade and investment, fostering private sector partnerships. The President stressed that there is no development without peace, and no peace without development. Turbulent global economic landscape, declining development aid flows, increasing conditionality, and the repercussions of the climate change make reforming the international financial system an imperative for achieving peace and development. He further emphasized the need for the comprehensive vision that addresses the challenge of financing development by enhancing the effectiveness of the existing financing mechanisms and introducing new ones, such as the debt for development swaps and expanding the issuance of the green bonds. The country has implemented economic measures that encourage the exports from developing countries to foreign markets, support growth opportunities for the emerging industries in Africa, and cooperate to support the activation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement by strengthening the supply chains between the African countries and building the capacities and the skills of the African youth. Moreover, Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati has held a series of meetings recently with several African foreign ministers on the sidelines of the Korea-Africa ministerial meeting in Seoul to strengthen the economic, security, development and trade cooperation across the continent. Egypt has expanded the diplomatic and the economic engagement across Africa in recent years through development partnerships, infrastructure projects, capacity building programs, and growing trade and investment ties. Cairo had also sought to strengthen political coordination on the regional security challenges, including counter-terrorism efforts in the Sahel and the Horn of Africa, as well as the cooperation among the Nile Basin countries. Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Dr. Ahmed, the member of the Foreign Relations Committee at the Egyptian Parliament. Thank you very much once again for being with us tonight. The strengthening of relations between Egypt and the African countries. How do you see its importance in terms of boosting the general vision of the foreign policy for the country?
As you said, it's very important because cooperation, it goes hand in hand with economic development.
Yes.
Because whenever we say development, development is a very big word with different definitions. But the definition that everyone understands is economic development, more than social development or human capital development, although they're all important.
Yes.
But as they said in the movie, show me the money. Economic development is always associated with that.
Yes.
And the beauty of it is, as I said, it's a common language that everyone understands. Thus, Egypt is playing a critical role in ensuring many African countries to reach their own potential and to reach limits they wouldn't have reached without Egypt's, I wouldn't say help, without Egypt's partnership with them. Because as much as they're benefiting out of this partnership, we're also benefiting out of it. So Egypt, and we saw the numbers rising over the past couple of years, Egypt's presence in Africa has grown so much in terms of Africa being an export body and an export partner to Egypt. So the number of exports that have been going from Egypt to different African markets had been increasing drastically over the past couple of years. And also Egypt's importing from other African countries also has been increasing, which means that there is more of an inter-African dependency, which is very critical in ensuring that Africa's vision for itself and how Africa sees its own development is actually being discussed and it's being presented on the world's agenda. So it's no longer Africa listening to what other players have been saying, but the beauty of what Egypt is doing with this economic cooperation is that Egypt is helping African countries to have their own saying and to have their own agenda and on the table and to have their own priorities set on the world stage. So economic development, import, export, and we also saw that also in many Egyptian universities opening international branch campuses in other African countries.
Yes.
Maybe historically we had Cairo University had a branch in Khartoum, but currently we saw the presence of Cairo University, Alexandria University, and many other universities in many other different African countries. Again, this helps with human capital development, but it also gets translated into economic development, because whatever we're helping them in education, it's always translated into jobs created, and those jobs created means less unemployment, and less unemployment means that more satisfaction happens by the people and more development, and thus it's an entire ecosystem.
Yes.
The beauty of Egypt's foreign policy is that it looks at the needs of those countries, and we tailor our solutions and our cooperation packages to their own needs. We don't just go and imply to them and we enforce a certain developmental model that doesn't suit their own needs. Absolutely not. We listen to their own needs and we tailor whatever we're offering to what they actually need to ensure that they reach their own developmental goals.
Within this same economic context, what is the importance of applying and implementing fully the African Free Trade Agreement, something that was called upon by Egypt and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi when Egypt was chairing the African Union in 2019?
Yes, 100%, as you said, and I believe that Egypt chairing the African Union was a pivotal point that changed the way Egypt looks and deals with Africa.
Yes.
Before that, Egypt's and the numbers support this argument that before that, yes, Egypt had a role to play in Africa. After 2019, Egypt had a leadership role to play in Africa. And as you said, the beauty of having such free agreements is that there are no tariffs, and this is one of the most important barriers and one of the most important tools that are being used when it comes to economic war, for example, between China and the US. This is what, for example, the US is using as a tool against Canada.
Yes.
So it's always the fact that we're opening our markets for each other, we're easing trade. This is very important, and this, by the way, this ties with the first topic that we tackled, which is Egypt ensuring that the Red Sea navigation, and even with Egypt's support for what's happening in Iran, with the importance of the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, again, this all translates into Egypt's foreign policy, which is saying that let's calm down, let's all sit, let's all see what can be a win-win situation for all of us in the road of cooperation and development, regardless of the form of development. So again, going back, economic development is the backbone of development, because just like, how did all of those developmental countries became developed countries? It didn't happen overnight.
Yes.
But it happened because they worked together, and we saw that the Eurozone or the European Union is a clear example of how when countries work together they reach different levels.
Can we have the same scenario here?
I believe we will not have it tomorrow morning, but I believe we're actually on the way, we're on the road, and I believe many African countries started understanding the importance of cooperation and the importance of working together,
Yes.
and importance of unionizing. And by unionizing here, I'm not referring to the African Union. I'm referring to the true belief of the African leaders of the fact that my neighbor is not my enemy. My neighbor is my friend. My neighbor is the one who I will actually work with to help me be in a better place. It's better for many African countries, instead of printing their own currencies in the West or in Europe, it's much better for them to print their own currencies, if not add their capitals. They can print it here in Egypt. They can print it in other African countries. It will be much cheaper when it comes to
Yes.
the cost of transport and so on. So the sky is the limit when it comes to cooperating and working together. But it all lies to the political will. And I believe Egypt's role after it leading the African Union played a critical role in changing the perception of how African leaders see African cooperation.
In order for the economic cooperation to be flourishing, we need security and stability. How do you see the role of Egypt promoting those two domains within the African continent?
I believe Egypt, since the inception of humanity and the inception of civilization,
Yes.
Egypt has been always a force calling for security, calling for peace, calling for development. And these are the themes that we've been going over and over since mankind started diplomacy and started working with each other. So I believe, as you said, without peace, definitely any other form of cooperation would be very difficult to achieve. But Egypt's smart foreign policy played, unbiased to Egypt, but it played a very critical role in ensuring that this part of the world, and especially the Horn of Africa, certain activities by certain countries doesn't go beyond a certain limit, where if it went beyond this limit, the harm would reach everyone, and it would reach certain points that it will be in no one's favor for that to happen. But Egypt's role, and we saw that in Egypt's work with Eritrea, for example, with Egypt's work with many other countries. Egypt has always been, since the start of the problem in Sudan,
Yes.
Egypt has been always calling for ceasefire. Egypt has been always calling for the ensure that Sudanese civilians ensure they are having a decent life, and not just in Sudan or Somalia or any other country.
And to be
It's
hosting
everywhere.
those nationals here in Egypt without naming them refugees,
Absolutely
treating
not.
them as citizens.
It is their country. Because again, when we say Egypt is the mother of all other lands, it's not just a saying. It's a practice that we believe in and we practice on a daily basis. And as you said, many other countries can call the guests refugees, but the beauty of Egypt is that we've never seen them as refugees, and we will never see them as refugees.
About 10 million of them here.
I think even 11 million.
Yes.
But because this is their own country, they're more than welcome to be in Egypt, because this is our role as the leading force in Africa. This is our responsibility. If you consider yourself as a leader of a certain area, then you need to act as much as you say. You need to talk the talk and walk the walk. That's the beauty of Egypt's foreign policy, is that we are up to whatever we say. So hosting them, definitely it's part of our responsibility towards them as humans, because they deserve a better life. And it's also a very important role that we play when it comes to ensuring the security and the stability of not just the region, but of Africa as a whole.
Speaking of Egypt's foreign policy, it is always being described as balanced between every other entity within the continent and outside of it as well. Speaking about the balance that Egypt is striking between the cooperation goals in terms of development for Egypt and for the continental initiatives such as the Agenda 2063 for Africa. How do you see the importance of balancing both goals at the same time?
Well, as you said, if we were not able to balance our relations with the East versus the West in a bipolar system,
Yes.
we wouldn't be able to more or less juggle more than one ball at the same time. And this is one of Egypt's soft power, is our diplomacy and our diplomats. They are experts when it comes to juggling more than one ball all at once, and in some cases 5 and 6 balls. So as you said, Egypt has the needed experience and the needed knowledge to know how to balance that. Maybe if Egypt was a new power coming in place, maybe we wouldn't have the needed experience and knowledge and know-how and human capital who know how to deal with that. But the fact that we already have the needed expertise, the needed resources, and by resources here, it's a very vast word.
Yes.
This allows us to juggle more than one ball and to ensure that we're meeting not just our own goals, but our own goals and African goals at the same time and simultaneously.
On the other hand, not just the economic cooperation or developing or promoting the security and stability within the African continent, what about the political agreements that were struck under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, more specifically since 2014, that could be translated on the ground for the benefit of the African citizen and the Egyptian citizen as well?
Here I want to start to build on what you're saying. I don't believe there is a differentiation between the Egyptian citizen and the African citizen.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, we're all Africans and we all face the same problems and we all have the same aspirations. So whatever a citizen is facing in a sub-Saharan African country is more or less the same challenge as what a citizen in North Africa is facing, which is big part of it is development, is wanting to live a better life.
Yes.
And as you said, it all starts with political will. It all starts with having a clear political agenda. It all starts with peace. And thus we reach the fact that we're building and we are reaching and citizens get to feel that. It will take some time for citizens to feel the development that is happening, whether in Egypt or in any other African country, because whatever gets destroyed over years will never be fixed overnight.
Yes.
It will take a couple other years for it to be reached. So the key metric is what citizens do believe and what citizens do feel in terms of whatever is happening in terms of development, because many countries over the years they choose certain developmental tracks that the citizens do not feel its impact. But the beauty of what Egypt is doing with Africa is that, as I said, it's maintaining a certain balance between certain quick wins, and here it comes the role of free trade, and certain long-term goals that will take years to achieve, and here comes the political aspect of the agreements, because again, a political process, unfortunately, it takes time. The more or the more developing you are, the longer it takes. So again, this is how they're both correlated and how both affect each other, and how Egypt is playing its role just like as it should be.
Yes, Dr. Ahmed Alaa, the member of the Foreign Relations Committee at the House of Representatives of Egypt. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. It was an honor, and thank you for having me.
The honor is all mine. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.